With Drake Maye, Colin, and the New England Patriots. How about that season he had? Pretty darn good. Ended up in the Super Bowl before he got kind of humbled by the Seahawks. We got an interesting chart here of quarterbacks after losing the Super Bowl in the last 7 years, Colin. This one is a bit surprising. May called it kind of a humbling experience. There's been a lot of failures. The year after losing the Super Bowl, 4 of the last 7 have missed the playoffs entirely.
Yeah. All right.
1 lost in the wild card round. That was Jalen Hurts. 2 in the AFC Championship.
Well, the Patriots' schedule is much tougher next year, and last year it was historically easy. Also, it was a weird year where, like Joe Burrow's Bengals and Lamar missed time.
Patrick Mahomes.
I do not think the Patriots are going to reach the Super Bowl. I don't. I think they're going to be good. I don't think they're going to reach the Super Bowl.
I am curious, though. Do you think that, this was kind of one of these, sophomore good fortunes for Maye? Or is there legitimacy, hey, he's a top 6, 7 quarterback in the league?
Oh, I think Maye's really good. I think he's really exceptional. I think he's the East Coast version of like Justin Herbert. I think he's really, really, really good.
What?
But I do think things worked in their favor. I think Bo Nix getting hurt worked in their favor. I think a couple of powerhouse teams. The division now, you got the Dolphins basically are hamstrung with Tua's contract, and the Jets have staffing issues. So, it's a 2-team race there. So, but a lot of Brady success. The Jets were dysfunctional. And when the Jets weren't dysfunctional, Rex Ryan beat Belichick and Brady a couple times.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't think New England's going anywhere, but last year felt like the football gods kind of nudged them along the way.
Totally.
Okay. Let's talk about this. There are a few things to unpack here. First off, it's always a safer bet to say that a team won't make the Super Bowl because reaching the Super Bowl is genuinely difficult. Winning the Super Bowl is hard. Getting there multiple years in a row is even harder. I really think the Chiefs and the Patriots, pre-Drake Maye, obviously with Tom Brady, have given us this false sense that if you're truly great, truly special, truly awesome, then you'll just keep going to the Super Bowl year after year after year. And that's just not reality. There are so many things that have to go right. Obviously, with Tom Brady and the Patriots, they were so great, so gifted. The coaching advantage that Belichick had was enormous. And Tom Brady is obviously literally the greatest of all time. Plus, he played for 1,000,000 years. So it makes sense that he was able to have all that success and get to all those Super Bowls. Right now, in the modern NFL, I would say the coaching gap has closed significantly, especially when you look at all the different offensive and defensive coaches we have today. And even quarterback play, that gap has also closed from my viewpoint. The floor has been raised. I feel like the floor used to be a huge drop-off, especially during the Patriots' main heyday. And so, you always need the football gods on your side. Even something like Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs getting to the Super Bowl in 2023 and 2024, you need things to break your way. So yes, the Patriots will need things to break their way in order to be great and win, etc., right? That's how this works. That's just the way it goes. But we keep conflating things. They had an easy schedule, this and that. And it's like, yeah, they did. But we're acting like Drake Maye isn't an awesome, elite, top-tier quarterback. And the only reason people even think that is because he just had an easy schedule. And that's simply not true. His accuracy, his ball distribution, his deep ball accuracy, yes, he took a ton of sacks, and his resilience despite that, his mobility, that stuff transcends playing against bad teams. If he were just feasting off bad teams because he's throwing to wide-open receivers all day, or sitting in the pocket with 5 minutes to pick and choose where to go, or if teams were such a mess that there's no lane integrity and he could just rip off easy 10-yard runs and jog out of bounds, sure. Absolutely. That's not what happened. Now, if you want to say that the Patriots as a team overall was a little bit inflated because of how things unfolded, sure. That's fine if that's the path you want to take. I disagree with that, but sure. They definitely benefited from an easier schedule. Absolutely. And I do think it was a major luxury. I don't think Patriots fans should really argue with that, going up against backup quarterbacks, right? That game was a mess. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the Patriots were a great team. And that DRA. Maye is great, that defense is great. Drake Maye is going to get better. we saw the worst version of Drake Maye last year. I guess technically his rookie year, but I don't really count that because that team was such a mess. But we saw the worst version of Drake Maye. Do you think Drake Maye is not going to improve this year? So, Bo Nix is allowed to improve, Caleb Williams is allowed to improve, Patrick Mahomes is allowed to improve, Josh Allen is allowed to improve, Lamar Jackson is allowed to improve, Joe Burrow is allowed to improve. Every quarterback is allowed to improve, but not Drake Maye? And it's all because, well, they played easier teams, and now they'll play harder teams. Okay, but who are the harder teams this year right now? Because Colin was saying something like, oh, this was a weird year for Joe Burrow. And it's like, the Bengals, that's not a weird year. If anything, it's a weird year that the Bengals are actually a good team and have to put it all together. It's an outlier year for Joe Burrow to be healthy. And for that defense not to be a mess, and that offensive line not to be a mess. That's an outlier. So I don't know about that. And at this point, the Buffalo Bills, the Baltimore Ravens, the Cincinnati Bengals, and yes, even the Kansas City Chiefs, they are all on the table to be really competitive, really great, win a lot of games, and be incredibly dangerous in the playoffs. And certainly, you should not want to sign up to play against Mahomes, Lamar, or Burrow in the playoffs, no matter what you think about their playoff performances. That should not be at the top of your list. Oh, I can't wait to face. No matter what you think about Lamar, you shouldn't be saying, I can't wait to play Lamar in the playoffs. I think there's some confusion there. But in no way do I think that those teams as a whole, in this immediate moment at least, that can all completely change, but I'm just talking about in terms of predictions of how great or not great teams are expected to be, right? So this is strictly an April prediction. In November or December, when I see how these teams are actually playing, sure, that can all change. But as of right now, I don't see why. If you're the Patriots, you should be thinking, we were really fortunate that the Ravens weren't playing, that the Bengals weren't playing, that Mahomes was injured and wasn't playing. I don't think you have to take that approach at all. I'm failing to see why we're not watching the beginning of what the Bills became with Josh Allen, what the Ravens became with Lamar, what the Bengals became with Joe Burrow, what the Chiefs became with Mahomes. I'm failing to understand that. And again, whether you make it to the Super Bowl or not, whether you just get knocked out in the divisional round, that doesn't mean the prediction was incorrect. Because the Patriots could win 11 games, 12 games, still get hung up on that number, and they could lose in the divisional round to the Buffalo Bills or something. I know that would hurt. But the problem is that people would say, see, it's a lot harder when you don't have that easy schedule. And it's like, no, this is just how football works. This is just the way it goes. The whole goal is simply to be as competitive and as great as you possibly can, and put yourself in a position to succeed year after year after year. So as long as you get enough opportunities, you can break through and win. But again, I fear, and listen, the New England Patriots are the perfect example of experiencing this, when you have everything perfect, right? When you have literally one of the greatest coaches of all time, especially defensively, the best coach out there, as well as Tom Brady, as long as your roster isn't a complete mess, you're going to win a lot of games. You're going to be in a position to win some Super Bowls. But especially when you have a Tom Brady, especially when you have a Bill Belichick, that's on a whole other level. And like I always say, it can't be that you're either Tom Brady or nothing. We come across this so much where people say, well, Tom Brady was able to win with this, or Patrick Mahomes was able to win with that. And it's like, that's the comparison. You're either the GOAT or you're nothing. Yes, Tom Brady was able to win a lot of games without unbelievable wide receivers because he's Tom Brady. Bill Belichick was able to find a way to build great defenses because he's by LL Belichick. Laughter, he's literally Bill Belichick. They're at the top. So to just lump that expectation onto Drake Maye and Vrabel doesn't quite make sense. I've got news for you. The norm is what the Rams have done. Actually, honestly, the norm is more what the Bills, the Ravens, and the Bengals have done. The next level up, I'd say, is what the Eagles and the Rams have done. And then the next level is what the Chiefs have done, if we're just looking at this immediate window, the Mahomes, Allen, etc. era. The more typical outcome is kind of like, yeah, we're competitive and we're in a position where we could have won the AFC Championship. You're just in position. We point fingers at the Bills and the Ravens and laugh, but no, if you're great and you have a great quarterback and a great team and you're well run, that's more the norm. It really goes, Bills, Ravens, then the 49ers, then the Rams, then the Eagles, then the Chiefs, in terms of the spectrum of rarity of what you can expect. So it's just like, again, the Rams, Stafford, McVay, elite, special, awesome. They're not getting to the Super Bowl every single year. They're just not. Josh Allen didn't make the AFC Championship game last year, and some people want to use that as an indictment. Oh, see, he's not as good as people think. And I just don't agree. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens missed the playoffs? Yeah, it was a weird, bizarre year. Lamar needs to be better, but I don't blame Lamar for why they didn't make the playoffs. The Bengals didn't make the playoffs in 2024. Don't blame Joe Burrow at all. People say, yeah, but what about the Miami game? I couldn't care less about the Miami game. Oh no, the Miami game. Yeah, it was all his fault. Nothing to do with the fact that he was balling out, throwing for 1,000,000 yards and 1,000,000 touchdowns, being dominant. Nope, it was his fault, all because of that one Miami game. No. And so, I'm not going to let Drake May suffer that same fate where it's like, oh, see, he lost in the Super Bowl, and if he doesn't get back, it's proof that he's not as good as people think. No. This stuff is always all over the place. It really is. And I think we find ourselves in these situations because we so desperately want to reach conclusions, and we want those conclusions to be firm and rooted, and we don't want to budge from them. And the reality is, and this is where it's like, if you really look closely enough, it takes away some of the intensity of the moment. It takes away some of the intensity of you've got to win, you've got to compete, because if you look at it more like, well, yeah, of course you're not going to get to the Super Bowl every year. Of course you're not going to get to the AFC Championship game every year. Of course you're not going to win the division every single year. Of course you're going to have some down years. Of course you're going to have some years where you're a top quarterback in the NFL, put up the best stats, best wins, and then the next season you don't do that. That's the way it's always been. But if you actually linger on that thought too much, then you realize, oh, wow. I guess in a way, this single season, this single playoff loss in the grand scheme of things, the big picture, doesn't actually tell us much. It was just, yeah, that was the year you lost. That was the year you weren't good enough. That was the year you just couldn't put it all together. That was the year the ball didn't bounce your way. That was the year the schedule was a little bit harder. That was the year the division was a little bit harder. Yeah. And you could technically explain every year that you don't win the Super Bowl through that lens, but that's not very fun, and it feels kind of unsatisfying. So instead, we look at it as, what does it mean that the Patriots didn't get back to the Super Bowl? Can Drake May ever get back? Well, Dan Marino never got back. It took years for Peyton Manning. And we do this because we have to make sense of the immediate season we just saw. We have to. And then even using things like previous Super Bowl losers, teams that lost or quarterbacks that lost, it's like, well, a lot needed to unfold for all those various seasons. Health, coaching, the makeup of the division, of the conference as a whole. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, that team was obviously falling apart. You see Patrick Mahomes on that list, and it's like, okay, I don't think anyone's going to try to argue Patrick Mahomes is a bad quarterback now. Jalen Hurts missed the playoffs, well, excuse me, he made the playoffs, lost in the wild card, and then won the Super Bowl and was Super Bowl MVP the following year. So, okay. Joe Burrow again got to the AFC Championship game, a game they could have won. Patrick Mahomes got to the AFC Championship game, a game they could have won. Jimmy Garoppolo went 3-3. I think that's self-explanatory. Jared Goff ultimately got traded for Matthew Stafford. So, yeah. I just don't think that matters. But here's the reality as well. The Bengals are a little bit harder to place here because Joe Burrow just can't stay healthy and that team is a mess. But look at all the losing quarterbacks on that list. You can see that every franchise has had success. The Rams have obviously had success, multiple NFC Championship games, reached the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl. The 49ers obviously continued to be competitive, whether it was Jimmy G or Brock Purdy, multiple NFC Championship games, a Super Bowl appearance. Again, the Bengals, Joe Burrow can't stay healthy, it's been a bit messed up. The Eagles, obviously, as I just explained, playoffs, NFC Championship games, Super Bowls, etc. Patrick Mahomes, self-explanatory. So the common theme here is that if you have a great quarterback and you're a well-run franchise, you're going to continue to have success. And again, Jared Goff obviously was split from Matthew Stafford. I'm not saying they would have on the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. I honestly have no idea, maybe. But I'm pretty confident that Jared Goff would have continued to be competitive with the Rams. Whether they officially win the Super Bowl or get there, I have no idea. But I do believe they still would have been consistently competitive. So you have to look at it like this: yeah, Drake Maye is an awesome quarterback on an incredibly well-run franchise. Therefore, they're going to be consistently good and consistently competitive year after year after year. Some of it is going to be losing the AFC Championship game. Some of it is going to be a random loss in the divisional round or wild card. A down year when everyone gets banged up and injured and it's kind of a mess. Maybe even missing the playoffs, right? It's all par for the course. You don't have to reach a definitive conclusion. And that's because people are uncomfortable with some of the conclusions they drew this past season about the schedule and all that. I get it. That's fine. But I don't know, man. If you can't trust that Drake Maye is legit, or you don't believe that the Patriots are going to find ways to improve, or at the very least be consistently competitive, then I honestly don't know what to tell you. Because it's just one of those things where you either see it or you don't. To me, it's pretty self-explanatory. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the New England Patriots? Do you believe Drake Maye is genuinely a great quarterback, or do you think it was just schedule, football gods, and all that good stuff? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some debates, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you be a part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.